moving on to, we're going to go to individual conferences now, and we're going to cover each of the conferences and who we think will come out and get the BCS bid. These are BCS conferences only, and the winners will get the automatic BCS bid to a bowl game. And we will also give you our sleeper of who we think could surprise everyone and make a good run and possibly steal this BCS bid away. I will let my partner start with his first for the ACC.
In the ACC, I have the Florida State Seminoles. I think they're going to suffer a heartbreaking loss early in the season here in Norman, but they're probably going to have a pretty good season after that. As a sleeper team, I think the North Carolina Tar Heels. As I said before, they got a lot of good talent, and they could really surprise some people.
I, too, picked Florida State to win the ACC Conference and go on to play in a BCS Bowl. I think Jimbo Fisher has enough talent that he can, in this first year, he can do his job and get that program where it needs to be to win the ACC title. My sleeper as well is North Carolina. They have a very strong defense, and defense wins championships. And if that defense can step up and keep people down, their offense may have just enough to get by and score enough points to win football games. Going on to the Big East, I have Pitt winning the Big East. I really think that this is a pretty easy conference to predict. Pitt looks to be pretty well above everyone, in my opinion. My sleeper would have to be West Virginia. I see West Virginia coming in and potentially having a decent season, and then the backyard brawl is always a huge game between Pitt and West Virginia, and I feel that West Virginia might have a chance to knock off Pitt and take that spot. I would go with UConn, but I just really don't feel comfortable. UConn's had some kind of issues with maybe not being able to finish as strong, and so I don't feel comfortable with UConn as my pick.
Well, I couldn't disagree with you more, actually, Brian. I have UConn winning the Big East. They suffered a heartbreaking tragedy last year when they lost one of their own teammates. They suffered a good few losses right around then, but then they finished the season strong and ended up winning a bowl game for them. I think UConn, it's their time. I think it's their turn to win the Big East. As a sleeper, I don't know how much of a sleeper they are. Cincinnati, obviously they got to a bowl game, to a BCS game last year. We're going to be going up there to Cincinnati to play them later in September. That'll be a good test for them to see how they respond to playing good quality opponents.
Moving on to the Pac-10, I have USC winning the Pac-10. I think there are a lot of questions with Lane Kiffin coming in and the sanctions that just recently got put on about how well this team will function together and how well the coaching staff will be able to control the players. But I do think that USC just has the talent to be able to beat all the other teams in the Pac-10. I think your sleeper in the Pac-10 would have to be Oregon State. They look very good, and I think they play Oregon at home on the last game of the season, and I think that since USC will not be getting a bowl bid, I think Oregon State could knock off Oregon and take the Rose Bowl bid this year.
I also think that USC will be the favorite to win the Pac-10, even though that is for naught. I think Oregon State will end up getting the BCS bid. I think they're the best team in that conference. I think Oregon, without Jeremiah Masoli, is not going to be as good as everyone thinks they are. If you want to even put a big sleeper in that, I think Stanford, as much as I don't like their band, I think they're a sleeper. I think that Harbaugh has a really good team out there. You got a quarterback that's come back after getting some experience in the bowl game. I think they could be a sleeper to make it to the Rose Bowl.
And if you bring up Stanford, you can't hardly rule out Mike Stoops' boys down in Arizona. They always give a fight every year, and they have a few favorable games at home this year, and I think that they may also be poised to maybe get a higher bowl bid.
Too true.
Moving on to the Big Ten. Ohio State, as almost always, the best team clearly in this conference. I think that they will go ahead and run the conference and play for a national title. My sleeper would have to be Iowa. I think this team is very good and will have a great season and will make a really good run at it. And I think they will play Ohio State at the end of the season and potentially have a good chance there, but I think Ohio State in the end will be too strong for them.
I also have Ohio State coming out of the Big Ten. They're the perennial best team in the Big Ten, and I think they'll win it again. My sleeper is Wisconsin. They're always right up there near the top, as I said earlier, but they haven't been able to push over. If they can go ahead and get a win over Ohio State, that'll put them in position to make it to the Rose Bowl.
Next, the Big 12. I have Oklahoma winning the Big 12 conference. might seem biased, but I really think that Oklahoma will be able to push past Texas in the Red River game this year. I think that Texas quarterback Gilbert, while he did get some really good experience in that national championship game under pressure, the Red River game is a totally different experience, and last year Landry Jones had to step in behind Sam Bradford, and he got some playing experience there, and I think in the end that may be just enough to push the Sooners past. My sleeper in this conference is Texas A&M. A lot of people are ranking them not in the top 25, and I really think that this team is poised to make a really good run this year. They have a very favorable schedule. They play lots of teams at home where they are very deadly with that 12th man. Their final game of the season is in Austin for against Texas, and that's always a big rivalry game. And I think if Texas A&M can beat Texas in Austin, that could potentially push them into the Big 12 championship game, where they would probably face Nebraska, which I would pick A&M over Nebraska.
Of course, I also think Oklahoma is going to win the conference. They have a favorable schedule, not having to go to Nebraska during the season. I didn't even pick a sleeper because I'm that confident in this team. I think Landry Jones coming back is going to be a lot better at quarterback than he was last year. I think Garrett Gilbert-Gottfried is going to be sacked a lot. I think they're going to be relying on the running game a lot down in Texas, which I don't think they're going to have enough success to win the conference on. I guess if you want me to pick a sleeper, A&M is a good team. The one thing you have to think about, though, is if there's a very good chance that we get that little triangle of tide like we did with Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Texas a couple years ago. You could very well see Oklahoma lose at A&M lose at Texas, and Texas lose in the Red River rivalry to Oklahoma. In which case, again, the BCS standings will decide who gets to go play, assumingly Nebraska from the north. Moving on to the SEC, I'll pick Bama again. Saban and his boys, they're boys to make another run. I don't see how anyone could beat them. My sleeper pick is not Florida, actually. I'm going to pick Auburn as my sleeper. They gave Alabama a great test at the end of the season last year, and I think when they get to play Bama again this year, if they can go ahead and win that, they have a chance to be in the SEC title game.
My SEC champion pick would have to be Alabama as well. I feel that they were the champion for a reason last year, and they have a lot of returning starters, and they look to be a very strong team again this year. The problem I have with that is that they could potentially be playing Florida twice in the season, once in the regular season and once in the title game, and I don't know if Alabama would be strong enough to maybe beat them twice. My sleeper in this conference, though, would not have to be Florida. It would be Arkansas. I feel that if Arkansas can maybe slip up and knock off Alabama when Alabama comes to Arkansas, then I think that Arkansas has an inside track with a very, very fair schedule to the rest of the season to maybe hold off Alabama in the standings and move on to the conference championship game.
Well, I guess let's move on to our BCS prediction. We'll start with the Fiesta Bowl. Brian, who do you have playing in the Fiesta Bowl?
In the Fiesta Bowl, I have the Oklahoma Sooners taking on the Pitt Panthers. Oklahoma winning the Big 12 bid and Pitt winning the Big East bid. And I have Oklahoma finally breaking through that shell of BCS losses and knocking off the Pitt Panthers in Tempe. Who do you have?
Well, I don't have either of those teams actually in the Fiesta Bowl. I have TCU getting a at-large bid out of the Mountain West Conference, and I have Nebraska getting an at-large bid out of the Big 12. I think TCU's been there before. Nebraska hasn't. I think TCU is going to come back and avenge their loss against Boise last year, and they're going to go ahead and beat Nebraska. In the Rose Bowl, I have OSU versus OSU, with OSU pulling out just by a hair. If that didn't make any sense, I have Ohio State versus Oregon State, with Ohio State taking it for the second year in a row.
In the Rose Bowl, I have the University of Iowa taking on Oregon State. I have Iowa being able to knock off Oregon State and getting a very coveted Rose Bowl for Iowa. They don't win a lot of those, and I really think this is a good opportunity for them to potentially get one.
Moving on to the Sugar Bowl, I have Alabama versus Virginia Tech. I think Bama is just more experienced. They have better players, and I think they'll probably just crush Virginia Tech.
In the Sugar Bowl, I have his Fiesta Bowl with Nebraska versus TCU. Although I do have the alternate ending, and I have Nebraska taking down TCU. I think Nebraska's black shirt defense will just be a little bit stronger than TCU's very stout defense, and I think it'll be a good defensive battle, but I think Nebraska will pull it out at the end. In the Orange Bowl, I have Florida State, the ACC champion, taking on Boise State, getting the at-large bid. Now, Boise State does have a very good chance at potentially moving up in the poll, but I just don't see that happening this year. I think Florida State will even take Boise State in the Orange Bowl and surprise a lot of people, because a lot of people will pick Boise State in that game. But I really think that Florida State will make a strong showing in their home state and be able to pull off that game.
Well, of course, the Orange Bowl is the less than enticing bowl, usually the worst matchup of all of them. I also have Florida State in this game. I have them against UConn. Not a game you really want to see. It's got a couple of good young teams, a couple of teams that don't get to the BCS very recently, and I think Florida State will pull it out. Good win for the Jimbo Fisher era.
In the championship game that will be played in Tempe this year, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama coming back for their second national title game in a row. I think that the power of the SEC will just outman the Big Ten, and I really think that Ohio State will struggle in this game and just will not be able to get comfortable, and Alabama will run all over them. And I see Alabama going back-to-back and winning another national title this year.
Well, I have a rematch of sorts. See if this sounds familiar. I have Oklahoma versus Boise State out in the desert. I think it'll be a rematch of that Fiesta Bowl a few years ago with completely different results. And that being, I think Oklahoma will win. Not necessarily a blowout, but I think Oklahoma will be able to assert their dominance. I think they'll give Boise State their first BCS loss, and they'll get their first national championship since 2000.
Well, thank you all for watching, and I hope that you tune in next week when we start covering the first week of games that will start on Thursday night. We try to post this video on Thursday night to get it ready for the weekend. We'll start covering matchups including USC at Hawaii, and then coming up the following Monday will be Boise State near Virginia Tech. Thank you for watching. Check back in next week, and we'll see you later.